In a recent interview that the producer of All's Justice had with Game Rant, we learned very crucial pieces of information pertaining to the game's development. In this video, we're going to be going over just that. If this interests you, then make sure you simply are subscribed to this channel. Hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. Let's try to get 100 likes on this video. And with that being said, let's hop into the video. When she was asked about the beginning of development for the game, the producer had some interesting things to say. She shares that after Once Justice series was released, they were thinking about creating a new game. The last Once Justice game that came out was Once Justice 2, which aired in March of 2020. It's quite likely that the reason why Ultra Rumble was made was to give them more time to work on All's Justice. Maybe Bandai wanted them to drop a My Hero game, but they weren't ready to drop All's Justice because it was way too early, so they dropped this. Plus, we have to remember what was going on still despite it being 2021. It was the magical C word, and I'm not talking about cereal. Now, All's Justice was stated to be in development for about 4 years. Again, 2021 still was aligned with the C word. This would mean that development started some point in 2021, whether it was at the start of 21, in the middle, or closer to the end. Because they said about 4 years, that would indicate it has to be relatively on the low end, closer to 4 years, or on the high end, closer to 5 years, but still 4 years nonetheless. The producer does state that this includes the initial concept phase, the testing phase, and so on. Something that people may not know is that when you are doing game development, you have to create a document, hence the concept phase. What are you going to do with this game? How are you going to go about the development? And ultimately, what is going to be included? Considering the anime hadn't reached season 6 until 2022, and the development is said to have started 4 years ago, this will put it roughly at 2021 before season 6. Oh, but guess what? This would open up the possibility of the game covering more content than we previously thought, because if we go off of the trailer and websites, we would only think that season 7/8 would be covered. But listen to this. As an example, Sparking Zero started development sometime in 2018-2019, as we were told that the game had 5 years in development. And despite this, the game did not include an ounce of superhero content on launch. Instead, they decided to go for the DLC route, giving us Gohan, Beast, and some of the other characters from there, despite that movie coming out 2 years prior, before the game release. So it's actually quite possible that they are going to cover, say, season 5 and onward, but because we already see scenes from season 7 and likely 8, we already know what we're getting. But I do find it interesting as the producer states that they've worked on the game for a pretty long time, which kind of gives more credit to the idea that they've been putting more effort, thus more content. So that whole idea of season 5, season 6 also being included, I don't think is out of the woodwork just yet. I think it has to be considered. Now, alongside development, the producer also stated that they restructured the battles in the game. Looking at games like Once Justice, Once Justice 2, it's going to be evident that they evolved on the battle system. The mechanics that we're aware of is the 3v3 tag system where you can switch out your characters, and we also know about the rising system. But outside of those two elements, we don't actually know what else they have in store. Perhaps they borrow more elements from the other 3D fighting games, such as Storm with its quick time events for more single player stuff. Maybe they have more points where you can do mashing similar to the first Storm game. But overall, I do expect there to be some more mechanics that we weren't expecting to see in All's Justice that does appear. Now, getting back to what the producer had said, she mentions that they were creating the plot and storyline of All's Justice alongside the anime. Now again, going back to the time that they likely started the development for this game, 2021. 4 years aligns up pretty perfectly. Guess what was going on during that time frame? Season 5. My Hero Season 5 in the anime started some point in 2021, and I believe it didn't end until the end. So likely they had to look at that as a point of entry when considering content for All Justice. And with Season 7 airing last year in 2024, all obvious is going to be in. Same thing with Season 8 dropping in October. They're likely going to use Season 8 as a marketing chip, especially going towards the end of the series and maybe even Vigilantes. But the producer could just be referring to Season 7, Season 8 being in this game, despite the lengthy process. They could have spent this time reconstructing the battle system and what they wanted to add, and that extra time could have been used. Because if this is a game continuing on One's Justice, despite them saying this is a new series, then that means that they had the mold, so they didn't have to spend as much time recreating a system, but more so refining a system. And likely that's where the extra time goes into, and they probably focused on developing maybe Season 6 and onward, because Season 6 technically is the start of the final saga with the Dark Deku arc and going forward. If I had to be a betting man, they could have started Season 5 content and went from there, or they could have started with Season 6/7 and went from there. I personally think Season 5 makes the most sense because it highlights the villains, especially their quirk awakenings, and it highlights the idea of what the game wants to go for with how the characters have these individual arcs. I think if you do the heroes, you also have to consider the villains, and start of Season 5 would highlight that much better than the later seasons. Because the developers and publishers worked alongside the anime, there might be some instances where there are some original content. Depending on when this game drops and how long Season 8 might be, we might see the end of the series in the game first, or we might see pieces of information that we didn't think we would see in the game before seeing it in the anime. Overall, I do think this is pretty good. Whether you believe that we're getting Season 5 content or we getting Season 6, 7, 8, or 7 and 8, they still use this time to refine a thing that some people consider to be great. What do you guys think about this? The amount of time that All Justice had in development might actually be very good, and this is exciting overall. Give me your thoughts, and I'll catch you guys in the video.